The wedding planner smiled as she arranged color samples across the table. Olivia should be here any minute. I checked my watch for the fourth time. She had been late before, but never on a day that mattered this much. Today was supposed to be easy. Flowers, music, the guest list, the beginning of the life we had spent 3 years dreaming about. The cafe door opened. My heart jumped before my eyes found her. Olivia walked in wearing the white coat I had bought her last Christmas. The engagement ring still rested on her finger, catching the afternoon light. For one brief second, everything felt normal. Then she sat across from me without smiling. No kiss. No joke about traffic. No teasing comment about how nervous I looked. Just a quiet stare that made my stomach twist. You're late. I know. She folded her hands together. Something about the way she breathed felt practiced, like she had repeated this moment in her head 100 times before arriving. The wedding planner glanced between us. I'll give you two a little privacy. She quietly carried the folders away. The table suddenly felt much bigger than it had a minute ago. I forced a small smile. So, where do you want to start? Roses or lilies? Olivia lowered her eyes. There isn't going to be a wedding. The words landed so softly. The damage wasn't soft at all. I waited. Surely there was another sentence coming. Some explanation. Some terrible joke. Instead, she slowly pulled the engagement ring from her finger. She didn't place it in my hand. She carefully set it on the table between us. The tiny sound of metal touching would echoed louder than every conversation around us. My fingers refused to move. What happened? Her eyes stayed on the ring. I've made my decision. What decision? A long breath escaped her. I'm leaving. The cafe noise faded into the background. People laughed somewhere behind me. A coffee machine hissed. Life kept moving while mine stopped. She finally met my eyes. Damien Blackwell. The name hit me like cold water. Everyone knew Damien, the billionaire whose face appeared on magazine covers every month. The man whose companies owned half the city. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it sounded impossible. You're joking. I wish it were that simple. You don't even know him. I do now. My heartbeat grew louder. How long? A few months. The answer hurt more than I expected. A few months? She nodded once. That means, while we were planning our wedding? Another quiet nod. Every memory from the past few months suddenly changed. The canceled dates, the late-night meetings, the unanswered calls, the distracted smiles. I had blamed work. The truth had been sitting beside someone else. Why? Her shoulders straightened. He can give me a future you can't. I blinked. I've been working every day for us. I know. I saved for this ring. I know. I took extra projects so we could buy a house. I know. Every answer came without emotion, like she had already cried somewhere else. Then why? She looked out the window. Love doesn't pay bills forever. I stared at her. We weren't struggling. We weren't growing. I was building our future. You were building a comfortable future. She paused before speaking again. I want more than comfortable. The words cut deeper than shouting ever could. You mean money. I mean security. You mean his money. I mean opportunities. You mean him. She closed her eyes. Yes. My hands stayed flat on the table because I wasn't sure they would stop shaking otherwise. So, everything we planned, I'll always appreciate it. Appreciate. That was the word she chose. Not love. Not regret. Not sorry. Appreciate. I never wanted to hurt you. A bitter laugh escaped me. That part didn't go as planned. Her lips trembled for only a second. Then the expression disappeared. I hope one day you'll understand. No. The single word surprised even me. I won't. She reached toward the ring, then stopped halfway. Keep it. I don't want it. It belongs to you. It belonged to us. Neither of us touched it. After another long moment, she stood. I should go. That easy. Pain flashed across her face. It vanished almost immediately. Goodbye, Ethan. She walked toward the door without looking back. I stayed there long after she disappeared. The ring remained between my hands. Cold. Heavy. Worth far less than what it represented. My phone vibrated. Then again. Then again. Message after message. At first I ignored them. Eventually I looked. A social media post filled the screen. Damien Blackwell stood beside Olivia at a luxury hotel. His arm rested comfortably around her waist. The caption read, "A beautiful future begins today." Thousands of likes. Hundreds of comments. Congratulations. Perfect couple. Power together. My stomach turned. The engagement hadn't even ended for an hour. The internet already knew. By evening, everyone else did too. Co-workers avoided asking questions. Neighbors suddenly became fascinated with their own phones whenever I walked past. One friend texted, "Are you okay?" Another simply sent a broken heart emoji. Neither knew what to say. Neither did I. Grace arrived at my apartment carrying takeout. She took one look at my face and quietly placed the food on the counter. "You don't have to explain. I don't think I can." She hugged me anyway. No speeches. No fake promises that everything would be fine. Just a reminder that someone still chose to stay. Hours later, after Grace left, I wandered through the apartment we had planned to share after the wedding. The framed engagement photos still hung above the couch. Olivia's smile looked so real. Mine looked even happier. I climbed onto a chair, carefully lifted the frame from the wall. A pale rectangle remained where sunlight had never reached. The empty space somehow hurt more than the picture. I wrapped the frame in an old blanket and slid it into the closet. Then I picked up the engagement ring. The velvet box opened with a soft click. The ring settled inside. The lid closed. That tiny sound felt like the end of an entire lifetime. Near the front door, my suitcase waited. Packed yesterday for a week-long business trip. Yesterday it had meant opportunity. Tonight it felt like escape. I sat beside it until sunrise. Somewhere between midnight and morning, a painful truth finally settled inside me. Olivia hadn't left me today. She had been leaving me one small piece at a time for months. The conversation had only made it official. The next afternoon, I boarded my flight without looking back at the terminal. As the plane rolled toward the runway, my phone buzzed one last time before airplane mode. A message from Noah. No words, only a photo. Damien stood on a stage inside a glittering charity gala, smiling beneath flashing cameras. Olivia stood beside him in a designer gown. Around her neck rested an expensive diamond necklace. I recognized it instantly. The newspapers had once reported Damien buying that exact necklace for another woman. Why would he give Olivia someone else's gift? As the plane lifted into the clouds, Heartbreak gave way to something new. A quiet feeling that this story wasn't over. Not even close. The photo Noah sent stayed in my mind long after the plane landed. Olivia smiled beside Damien, but something about that smile refused to convince me. A borrowed necklace. A perfect pose. A picture that looked more expensive than honest. I slipped my phone into my pocket. It didn't matter anymore. At least that was what I kept telling myself. The business trip became something much bigger than a week away from home. The company offered me a chance to lead the design of a new waterfront project in another city. 6 months. A fresh office. A larger team. A chance I would have turned down before. Back then, every decision had included Olivia. Now, there was only me. Grace answered on the second ring. So, they offered me the project. And, I don't know. A quiet laugh reached my ear. You do know. What if leaving means I'm running away? What if staying means you're standing in the ashes of something that's already burned? I leaned against the hotel window. Cars moved below like tiny lights. You think I should go? I think you should stop waiting for someone who already made her choice. Her words stayed with me all night. The next morning, I signed the contract. 3 weeks later, moving boxes filled my apartment. The place echoed with every step. The couch where Olivia and I planned our future was gone. The dining table disappeared next. Every empty corner reminded me that homes were built with more than furniture. Noah arrived carrying coffee and a roll of packing tape. You packed everything except your books. They're heavy. So are regrets. A small smile escaped before I could stop it. There you are. What? That face. What face? The one that almost remembers how to smile. He tossed me the tape. Finish packing. The moving truck won't wait because you're feeling dramatic. You're a terrible therapist. Good thing I'm an engineer. By sunset, only one box remained. Inside sat old birthday cards, movie tickets, vacation photos, little pieces of a life that no longer existed. My hand stopped over a framed picture of Olivia and me standing beside the lake where I proposed. I studied it for a long moment, then placed it gently into the trash bin, not because I hated her, because I couldn't keep living inside old memories. My phone buzzed. Unknown notification. A social media article. Damian Blackwell and Olivia Brooks attend royal charity banquet. I closed it without reading. Enough. The moving truck pulled away the following morning. The apartment stood completely empty. Bare walls. Bare floors. No laughter. No promises. No wedding plans. I locked the door. This time I didn't look back. The new city felt louder. Bigger. Nobody knew my story. Nobody looked at me with pity. The office overlooked the river where our project would rise over the next 2 years. Glass towers reflected sunlight across the water. For the first time in months, I felt something close to excitement. My new manager welcomed me with a firm handshake. "We've heard great things about your work. I'll do my best. I expect more than your best." He smiled. So impressed me. Work became my escape. Long hours turned into finished blueprints. Finished blueprints became approved designs. Approved designs became opportunities. The more I focused on building, the less time I spent rebuilding old conversations inside my head. Pain didn't disappear. It simply stopped controlling every hour. One afternoon, I noticed a woman studying one of my models. She walked slowly around it, paying attention to details most people ignored. "You moved the entrance." Her voice surprised me. Most architects hide it behind the fountain. I nodded. I wanted people to see the river before the building. A warm smile crossed her face. "That tells me more about you than your portfolio." She introduced herself as Charlotte Hayes, one of the project's investors. Professional, calm, nothing like the people who chased attention. "You designed this?" "Yes." She traced the edge of the model without touching it. "It feels hopeful." Nobody had ever described my work that way. "Thank you. I mean it." She glanced toward the meeting room. "They're waiting for us." No flirting. No unnecessary compliments. Just quiet respect. It felt strangely comforting. Months passed. My mornings began before sunrise. Running. Coffee. Work. Gym. Sleep. Repeat. The mirror slowly reflected someone different. Not happier. Stronger. The anger that once filled every thought became discipline instead. Noah visited during the winter. "You've changed. Hopefully for the better. You don't stare at your phone every 5 minutes anymore." I got tired of waiting. He grinned. "Now you're talking." We walked through the nearly completed construction site. Workers greeted me by name. Engineers asked for my opinion. The respect felt earned, not borrowed from someone else's success. That evening, Noah opened his phone. "You want gossip?" "Probably not." "Too bad." He turned the screen toward me anyway. A celebrity article filled the display. Damian and Olivia stood outside another luxury event. She smiled for the cameras. Her eyes looked exhausted. The headline praised their glamorous life. The comments underneath told a different story. "She never looks happy. Why does she always stand behind him? Does she even have friends anymore?" I handed the phone back. "It doesn't matter. You're lying." "A little." "You still love her?" The question lingered between us. "I miss who I believed she was." "That isn't the same thing." "No, it isn't." The unread messages started arriving in early spring. The first simply read, "Can we talk?" I left it unopened. A week later came another. "Please." Then another. "There are things you don't know." Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Every message stayed unread. One evening I opened my contacts. My thumb rested over Olivia's name. 3 years together. Hundreds of conversations. Thousands of memories. One tap. Delete contact? I closed my eyes. Then pressed it. The name disappeared. The number became nothing more than random digits. It hurt. Healing often does. Charlotte noticed the change before anyone else. "You seem lighter today." Maybe I finally stopped carrying something. "You don't have to tell me." "I appreciate that." She smiled into her coffee. People usually talk when they're ready. And if they're never ready, then they deserve the silence they choose. Simple words, powerful enough to stay with me all week. She never pushed, never tried to fix me. She simply treated me like a man instead of a broken project. That alone felt rare. Summer arrived. The waterfront building finally reached its highest floor. Standing on the rooftop, I watched the city spread beneath me. A year ago, I thought my life had ended. Now I stood inside something I had built with my own hands. My phone vibrated. A news alert. Blackwell Industries under investigation for financial fraud. I frowned. Another notification followed immediately. Anonymous sources claimed federal investigators had entered Damien's headquarters. Stock prices dropped. Investors panicked. The perfect empire suddenly showed its first crack. Before I could finish reading, my phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I ignored calls like that. Something made me hesitate. The ringing continued. My finger hovered above the screen. Then I answered. I didn't speak. Soft breathing reached my ear. Several long seconds passed. Finally, a voice I hadn't heard in almost a year whispered my name. Ethan. Ethan. Olivia's voice barely rose above a whisper. It carried none of the confidence that haunted me for the past year. No pride. No polished charm. Only exhaustion. I remained quiet. The sound of her breathing filled the space between us. I didn't think you'd answer. I almost didn't. I know. Another pause followed. I don't want to argue. Then why are you calling? A shaky breath reached my ear. I need one meeting. No. The answer came faster than I expected. Please, just hear me out. I heard enough the day you walked away. I deserve that. You deserve honesty. So do you. My fingers tightened around the phone. What does that mean? There are things you never knew. I don't need explanations anymore. This isn't about getting back together. She hesitated. I know I lost that chance. The words felt different from an apology. Not dramatic. Not desperate. Just painfully honest. I need you to know the truth. I stared through the office window. Rain slid down the glass, turning the city lights into blurry streaks. 1 hour. She stayed silent. 1 hour tomorrow afternoon. A quiet sob escaped before she caught herself. Thank you. The call ended. I stood there long after the screen turned black. Sleep refused to come that night. My mind wandered through memories I thought I had buried. Our first apartment. Late-night pizza after work. The tiny notebook where Olivia had written wedding ideas. Every memory now carried another version hidden behind it. How many smiles had been real? How many had already belonged to someone else? Morning arrived with more questions than answers. Grace called while I was making coffee. You sound tired. I have a meeting. With her? Yes. She didn't answer right away. You don't owe her anything. I know. So why go? Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering. A soft sigh came through the speaker. Then listen. And after that, walk away if walking away is still the right choice. We met in a quiet restaurant across from the river. The place had once been one of Olivia's favorites. Back then, we couldn't afford dessert. Now I could have bought the entire menu. Funny how life worked. She was already waiting when I arrived. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize her. The expensive designer clothes were gone. Simple sweater. No jewelry except a small watch. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. She looked thinner, older, not because of age, because worry leaves its own marks. You came. I pulled out the chair across from her. You asked for an hour. A waiter placed 2 menus on the table. Neither of us opened them. You've changed. So have you. A weak smile appeared. Yes. The waiter returned. Can I get you anything? Coffee. Olivia glanced at the menu without really seeing it. The same. After he walked away, she folded her hands together. I've practiced this conversation 100 times. Reality usually ignores rehearsals. She nodded. I deserve that too. The coffee arrived. Neither cup was touched. Steam slowly disappeared into the air. I thought money would solve everything. Her eyes stayed fixed on the untouched cup. I kept telling myself I was making the smart choice. You called it security. I remember. And now? She gave a sad smile. Now I know there are prisons with marble floors. I waited. You remember how Damien always looked perfect in interviews? Yes. He lives exactly the same way at home. She paused. Everything is control. What I wear, who I meet, what I post, when I smile. The words came slowly, as if each one weighed more than the last. At first I thought he was protecting our image, and later I realized there was never an hour. She finally looked at me. There was only him. I leaned back. You still chose him. I did. You ignored everyone. I know. You ignored me. I know. No excuses. No attempt to shift the blame. Only acceptance. The honesty surprised me more than tears ever could. There has to be more. There is. She reached into her purse. A folded newspaper clipping slid across the table. I opened it. An old business article. My former company stood beside Damien's corporation in a headline about a failed merger. I don't understand. You remember your old boss? Of course. He rejected Damien years ago. What does that have to do with us? She closed her eyes. Everything. Confusion spread through me. Explain. He knew you worked there. My heartbeat slowed. He asked about you long before he ever introduced himself to me. That makes no sense. It didn't to me either. She swallowed hard. One night, he had too much to drink. Her fingers trembled around the coffee cup. He laughed about winning. Winning what? You. The restaurant suddenly felt colder. He wanted to prove he could take anything connected to the people who embarrassed him. I stared at her. No. I wish I were lying. You're telling me our relationship became part of some business game? A tear rolled down her cheek. Yes. I couldn't breathe for a moment. He didn't fall in love with you. No. He wanted to defeat me. And everyone connected to your old company. The coffee sat untouched between us. Cold now. Neither of us noticed. I should have walked away. You didn't. I believed I'd change him. A bitter laugh escaped me. That's dangerous. I know. He bought me expensive gifts. She looked toward the window. Then he reminded me they belonged to him. He made decisions for me. He chose my friends. He even approved my clothes. Each sentence answered questions I had carried for months. The glamorous photos. The forced smiles. The empty eyes. You could have left. I tried. The words barely reached me. What happened? He reminded me that everyone would call me a gold digger. She wiped her face. He knew I was ashamed. And you stayed. I was trapped inside my own mistake. She slowly rolled up the sleeve of her sweater. A fading bruise covered part of her wrist. My jaw tightened. He did that. She nodded once. He lost his temper. Anger rushed through me. Not because I wanted her back. Because nobody deserved that. You went to the hospital. Another nod. I told them I slipped. You lied for him. I wasn't ready to admit the truth. She opened her purse again. This time she placed a folded paper on the table. Hospital visitor form. Patient name, Olivia Brooks. Emergency contact, Damien Blackwell. No visitors allowed. I kept this. Why? To remind myself how lonely money feels. I couldn't find words. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Another part remembered the engagement ring resting inside a velvet box back home. Still locked away. Still untouched. The symbol of a future she had thrown away. You wanted honesty. She slowly pushed back her chair. Now you have it. Why tell me now? Because I couldn't live with a lie anymore. She stood. I don't expect forgiveness. You're right. A painful smile crossed her face. I know. I hope you get out. I will. But not because you saved me. Her shoulders straightened. This time I'll save myself. Those words surprised me. Maybe she had finally started changing. Maybe. We walked outside together. The river flowed quietly beside the sidewalk. No matter what happened, she whispered, you deserved better than what I did. I know. The answer came without anger. Without bitterness. Just truth. She turned toward the parking lot. I watched her leave. A year ago, I would have chased after her. Today my feet stayed exactly where they were. Compassion didn't have to cost my self-respect. As I reached my office that evening, my phone rang. Unknown number again. This is Special Investigator Daniel Harper. His calm voice carried unusual weight. We have evidence connecting Damien Blackwell to several financial crimes. My grip tightened around the phone. Mr. Carter, your testimony may help expose everything. The investigator didn't waste time. We've collected financial records, witness statements, and internal emails. Your former employer believes you may remember conversations that connect several pieces. I leaned back in my chair. If I help, this isn't about getting even. It shouldn't be. I don't want revenge. Daniel Harper gave a slow nod. Then we're already on the same page. He slid a thick folder across the table. Inside were copies of contracts, bank transfers, and meeting notes. Names I recognized. Companies I had worked with years earlier. One page made me stop. Damien's signature rested at the bottom of an agreement connected to the failed merger Olivia had told me about. He really built all of this because he couldn't accept losing. Daniel folded his hands. Some people don't measure success by what they earn. They measure it by what they take from others. The meeting lasted nearly 3 hours. I answered every question honestly. Nothing more. Nothing less. When it ended, I signed several legal papers. The ink dried quickly. My decision felt heavier. Walking out of the building, I noticed my reflection in the glass doors. A year earlier, I would have been driven by anger. Now something had changed. Justice and revenge looked similar from far away. Standing close enough, they became completely different. The investigation exploded across every news channel. Morning headlines turned into breaking news alerts before lunch. Blackwell Industries under federal investigation. Senior executives questioned. Company shares falling. Investors pulling out. Every hour brought another crack in Damien's perfect image. Co-workers gathered around televisions during lunch. Nobody celebrated. Too many innocent employees depended on that company. Noah watched one report beside me. Think he'll get out of it? Not this time. You sound certain. I've seen the evidence. He glanced toward me. You okay? I thought I would enjoy watching him fall. And I watched reporters crowd around Blackwell headquarters. I mostly feel sorry for everyone he dragged down with him. Noah smiled. You've changed more than you realize. The courtroom carried a strange kind of silence. Not peaceful. Heavy. Every person inside seemed to be holding the same breath. Damien entered wearing an expensive suit that couldn't hide the confidence he had already lost. He glanced around the room. When his eyes reached me, they stayed there for several seconds. No smile. No smirk. Only frustration. The man who once believed he could buy anything now sat behind a defense table. My name echoed through the courtroom. I walked toward the witness stand. One step after another. No shaking hands. No second thoughts. The oath finished. Questions followed. How do you know the defendant? I knew him because he became engaged to the woman I planned to marry. Did you ever witness conversations related to the business dispute involving your former employer? Yes. I answered carefully. Clearly, every memory came back with surprising detail. Old meetings, unexpected phone calls, conversations that had seemed meaningless at the time. Each answer connected another missing piece. Damien never interrupted. He simply watched. When the prosecutor displayed financial records beside my testimony, several people in the courtroom exchanged uneasy looks. The story finally made sense. Greed, pride, control. Nothing about it had ever been love. Hours later, the judge announced another recess. I stepped outside into the afternoon air. Grace waited near the courthouse steps. She wrapped her arms around me before speaking. You did the right thing. I hope so. You already know you did. She stepped back. The truth doesn't become cruel just because someone fears it. Those words stayed with me during the rest of the trial. Weeks passed before the final ruling. Fraud, bribery, financial manipulation, multiple convictions. Damien's empire collapsed faster than it had risen. Luxury homes were seized. Business partners disappeared. Magazine covers replaced praise with scandal. The man who believed money solved every problem discovered it couldn't by another verdict. Justice finally arrived. Quietly. Completely. The public, however, wasn't as fair. Olivia's face appeared everywhere. People called her names. Strangers blamed her for crimes she never committed. Comment sections became battlefields. Every interview request carried hidden cruelty. She refused all of them. One evening I saw her walking through the city while reporters followed several steps behind. She never answered a single question. She simply kept walking. There was no mansion waiting anymore. No expensive car. No security team. Only consequences she had never imagined. 3 days after the trial ended, someone knocked on my apartment door. I already knew who stood outside. Olivia held a small velvet box in both hands. The same one I had once given her. "May I come in?" I stepped aside. The apartment felt warm. Simple. Comfortable. Nothing like the luxury home she had lived in. She noticed the framed architectural award on the shelf. "You earned it." "I did. You always deserved it." Her eyes moved across the room. Everything looked peaceful. Maybe because it finally was. "You don't have to explain anything," I told her. "I know." She gently placed the velvet box on the coffee table. "I came because there are things I finally understand." Neither of us sat immediately. The room carried a quiet weight. Not awkward, just honest. She slowly lowered herself onto the couch. I spent months blaming Damien. A small laugh escaped her. It was easier than blaming myself. I remained standing for another moment before taking the chair across from her. "He manipulated you." "Yes, but I opened the door." The words hung between us. I kept telling myself I was practical. She brushed a finger across the velvet box. The truth was uglier. "What truth?" "I stopped believing in us before I stopped loving you." That confession caught me off guard. I became afraid. Of what? An ordinary life. She smiled sadly. I thought ordinary meant failure. And now, I would trade every expensive thing I owned for one peaceful dinner in our old apartment. Neither of us reached for the box. She finally opened it. The engagement ring rested inside exactly as I remembered. I kept it. Why? Because throwing it away would have meant admitting I threw away the wrong future. She pushed the box toward me. "It belongs with you." I picked it up. The metal still shined. Time hadn't changed it. People had. "You don't owe me this." "I know. You don't owe me an apology either." She blinked. "I don't. No." Confusion crossed her face. "I've waited a year to tell you how sorry I am." "I believe you." "Then why does it sound like it doesn't matter?" I turned the ring slowly between my fingers. "Because my healing stopped depending on your apology a long time ago." Her eyes became glossy. Not from rejection. From understanding. I kept thinking forgiveness would fix everything. It fixes some things. And the rest stays broken. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "I can't change what I did." "No." "I can't ask you to trust me again." "No." "But I wanted you to know. I finally understand what I destroyed." The words carried no excuses. Only truth. I closed the velvet box. "I hope you build a better life." "I'll try." "You don't need my permission." She stood. "So this is goodbye." "I think it is." She nodded slowly. Then, almost too quietly to hear, her voice trembled. "I still love you." Before I could answer, movement outside the window caught my attention. Charlotte stood near the entrance to the building. She wasn't watching through the glass. She wasn't trying to interrupt. She simply waited patiently, giving me all the time I needed. Two different futures stood only a few steps apart. One belonged to my past. The other hadn't asked me to choose yet. "I still love you." Olivia's words stayed in the room long after her voice faded. The small velvet box rested between us on the coffee table. The engagement ring inside caught the evening light, just as it had the day I placed it on her finger. Back then, it represented a promise. Now it represented a lesson. Outside the window, Charlotte remained near the entrance. She wasn't checking her watch. She wasn't trying to hurry me. She simply trusted that I would walk out when I was ready. That quiet respect reminded me how different my life had become. I picked up the velvet box and stood. "So, this is really the end?" Olivia brushed away a tear before answering. "I think it has to be." "It does." She nodded slowly. No argument. No desperate attempt to change my mind. Just acceptance. A year ago, I would have mistaken that silence for giving up. Now I understood it was something else. It was finally facing the truth. I held the ring in my hand one last time. "You know what I kept thinking after you left?" Her eyes stayed on me. "I thought if I worked harder, earned more money, became more successful, maybe one day you'd regret your choice." She lowered her head. "You did become successful." "Yes." A small smile crossed my face. But something unexpected happened. What? I stopped needing your regret. The room became very still. Not uncomfortable. Just honest. You're a different man. I had to become one. I placed the ring back into the box and gently pushed it toward her. She frowned. You don't want it? No. It belongs to you. I slowly shook my head. It belongs to the past. She stared at the box for several moments. What should I do with it? That decision is yours. You're really letting go. I already did. Another tear slipped down her cheek. This time she smiled through it. I always believed winning meant being chosen by the richest person in the room. She laughed softly at herself. I never realized the richest life was the one I already had. The words hurt. Not because they tempted me, because they arrived too late. You'll build another life. I hope so. You don't need someone else's money to do it. She looked surprised. You still believe I can? I believe people can change. A pause settled between us. But change doesn't erase consequences. I know. You'll have to live with your choices. So will you? Yes. The difference was simple. I no longer feared mine. She picked up the velvet box. For a moment, I thought she would leave with it. Instead, she carefully placed it back onto the table. A memory should stay where it belongs. Without another word, she walked toward the door. Her hand rested on the handle. Thank you for listening. The door closed gently behind her. I didn't follow. I didn't call her name. Some endings deserve quiet. I picked up the velvet box one final time. The ring remained inside. I carried it to the bookshelf and placed it in the back corner. Not hidden, not displayed, just finished. Then I stepped outside. Charlotte looked up as I approached. You took your time. I needed to. She smiled. I figured. We started walking without deciding where to go. The evening air felt cool. Street lights reflected across the river. After several minutes, she finally spoke. You don't have to explain. I think I want to. She listened while we walked. I told her everything. The engagement, the betrayal, the investigation, the trial, the goodbye. She never interrupted. When I finished, she took a slow breath. That sounds exhausting. It was. And now? I looked toward the water. Now I think I'm finally living instead of surviving. A gentle smile appeared. I've been hoping you'd reach that point. You waited a long time. Some things are worth waiting for. Her words carried no pressure, no expectations, only patience. That was enough. The months that followed became some of the busiest of my life. The waterfront project entered its final stage. Every morning began before sunrise. Every evening ended with another problem solved. The building slowly became real. Glass walls rose toward the sky. Steel disappeared beneath polished stone. Ideas that once existed only on paper stood proudly against the horizon. Noah visited the site one afternoon. He whistled as he stepped inside the main entrance. You actually pulled it off. We all did. He folded his arms. Remember when you almost turned this job down? I remember. What changed your mind? I smiled. Losing the wrong future made room for the right one. He laughed. That almost sounded wise. Don't get used to it. Grace came for the grand opening. She walked through the finished lobby with wide eyes. I still remember when you drew buildings on notebook paper. I still have those notebooks. You should frame one. I think I'll keep them exactly where they are. She squeezed my shoulder. Dad would have been proud. Those words meant more than the applause waiting outside. The ceremony ended with cameras flashing and speeches echoing through the building. When everyone finally left, I stayed behind. The first sunlight of the morning poured through the eastern windows. Golden light spread across the polished floor. I stood alone in the center of the lobby. 1 year ago, I believed my future had ended. Now I stood inside something I had built with my own hands. Not for Olivia. Not to prove anyone wrong. For myself. Life settled into a quiet rhythm. Charlotte and I spent weekends exploring small cafes instead of expensive restaurants. We laughed easily. Disagreed honestly. Neither of us tried to become someone else. The relationship grew slowly. Strong things usually do. One afternoon, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a key. To what? My apartment. I raised an eyebrow. That feels important. It is. She smiled. No pressure. You're impossible. I've heard worse. I slipped the key into my pocket. Maybe I'll give you one too. I'll wait. She always knew how to give space without creating distance. Several weeks later, I heard that Olivia had left the city. No interviews, no farewell posts, no dramatic announcement. She accepted a position at a small community charity in another state. Far away from cameras, far away from luxury, far away from the life she once believed she wanted. I wished her well, quietly. That was enough. Damien remained exactly where justice had placed him. His wealth couldn't unlock prison doors. His influence couldn't erase signed verdicts. Some victories arrive loudly. Others simply arrive fairly. The moving truck parked outside my new house on a cool autumn morning. Not a mansion, not a palace, just a home. Charlotte helped carry the last box inside. You packed too many books. I've heard that before. She laughed. I like Noah already. After arranging the final pieces of furniture, I found myself standing at the front door. The old apartment key rested in one hand. The new house key waited in the other. Such a small object. Such a huge difference. I placed the old key into a drawer, then locked the front door with the new one. The sound echoed softly through the house. It didn't feel like something had ended. It felt like something had finally begun. Standing there, I understood the greatest victory had never been making Olivia regret leaving me. It wasn't watching Damien lose everything. It wasn't the awards, the promotions, or the beautiful new building rising beside the river. The greatest victory was much quieter than that. I had stopped measuring my worth through someone else's love. The man who once begged to be chosen no longer existed. In his place stood someone who finally chose himself. And that made all the difference.